There are many things that can sway someone's opinion on a game. A deal breaker for one person might be what makes the game playable for another. For me, whether or not I enjoy a game really boils down to 5 main sections: story, characters, music, exploration, and combat, not necessarily in that order. Now, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on Final Fantasy V. Now, here's the thing. Final Fantasy V has always been an interesting entry in the series for me, but not for the reason that many people might think. The thing is, Final Fantasy V was actually the only game in the entire series, spin-offs included, that I was very, very lukewarm on, bordering dislike. Please don't click off just yet. My channel was something I created because I wanted a place where I could look at games with a critical eye, but also appreciate them for what they are and the feelings they invoked in me. As such, I was a little hesitant to talk about Final Fantasy V because I remembered not liking it, but I couldn't think of a specific reason why. It was just like, at the time, the game didn't really click with me. However, I am really glad I did pick the game back up, even though I am neglecting Persona 3 Reload and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for it, because the second time around, I really, really enjoyed the entire experience. The story of Final Fantasy V begins 30 years before the events of the actual game. Exdeath, the big bad of the game, and a very powerful sorcerer, is born from a tree in the Great Forest of Moor. His goal is to obtain the power of the Void and use it to destroy the world and himself, reducing it to nothing. His attempts are stopped by 4 warriors known as the Dawn Warriors, which consists of Galuf, Kelga, Ziza, and Dorgan. The 4 warriors traveled from their world to Bartz's world and used the crystals to seal Exdeath away. Of the 4, only Dorgan remains in Bartz's world to watch over Exdeath. The crystals manage to hold Exdeath for 30 years before they begin to weaken and eventually break. The first crystal to weaken is the Wind Crystal, which causes the King of Tycoon to venture to the Wind Shrine to check on it. He is soon followed by his daughter Reyna, who is attacked by goblins near the Tycoon meteor and is saved by Bartz Klauser, the protagonist of the game. Galuf, an old man with amnesia who we met by the meteor, along with Bartz and Reyna, continue their journey onwards to the Wind Shrine. They invade a pirate's cave to find a means of travel to the Wind Shrine, meeting Pirate Captain Varys and our last party member. The 4 travel to the Wind Shrine and witness the crystal shattering, sending them on a frenzied adventure to find and protect the other 3 crystals. During that journey, we meet many friends that seem to know Galuf, only giving us vague tidbits of information before quickly dying off. Eventually, Galuf does manage to regain his memory with the help of his granddaughter Kryl. However, he and his companions are too late to do anything before the last crystal shatters and Exdeath is released. Galuf and Kryl return to their world, following Exdeath in hopes of stopping him. Galuf says his goodbyes to Bartz, Reyna, and Varys, not wanting them to follow him because there would be no way for them to return to their own world. They decide to follow him anyway, and in Galuf's world we gain more insight into the Dawn Warriors and Exdeath's origins. We eventually meet a sage who tells us to travel to the Great Forest of Moor to defend it, as this is the place Exdeath originates from. While inside the Elder Tree, Exdeath ambushes us, leading to the death of Galuf. Kryl, grief-stricken, swears to follow in her grandfather's footsteps and joins Reyna, Varys, and Bartz as the last warrior of light. The 4 of them travel to Exdeath's castle and fight him. Just when they believe they won, Exdeath reveals his true plan to return his and Bartz's world to their original state, creating the Merged World. In the Merged World, Exdeath is able to begin using the power of the Void, leading to the destruction of several settlements, including Castle Tycoon and Bartz's hometown. We are then given a scripture that has information about lithographs that allow us to access several powerful spells, weapons, and summons. The player is also given the option to skip out on that and just head straight for the X-Zone where Exdeath awaits. In the depths of the X-Zone, Bartz and company challenge Exdeath in order to stop his plan of destruction. With the help of their lost friends and companions, the 4 are able to overcome the trials and emerge victorious in a very Final Fantasy-esque style. As prophesized in the world's history, despite the Void returning and consuming the world, the 4 lights born out of the Warriors of Light and the crystals they possess rejuvenate the world, and our party members are able to return to the Merged World. Personally speaking, characters are the most important aspect of a video game to me. Oftentimes, I can find myself rolling my eyes through a story or gritting my teeth through frustrating combat as long as the characters are well written enough to keep me engaged. I feel like my lack of understanding of the Final Fantasy V characters, along with the fact that I played the game at a glacial pace, which led me to forget much of the context of what was going on with what I was playing, led to my feelings of indifference surrounding the game. Playing it straight through, however, I find the cast of Final Fantasy V to be very compelling, especially when comparing the themes of loss with that of found family, which the game does throughout it. Bartz is our main protagonist. He is a young man from a small, secluded mountain village who has taken to traveling the world with his chocobo companion Boko since the death of his father. Bartz is something of a legacy, as his father Dorgan is one of the Dawn Warriors who sealed away Exdeath 30 years ago. While his mother passed away long before the events of the game, when Bartz was just a child, Dorgan goes 3 years before the events of the game, his final wish being that Bartz explores the world. Upon meeting Reyna and Galoof and learning of their intentions to travel to the Wind Shrine, Bartz initially turns down the invitation to join them, citing the excuse that he and Boko have their own travels to return to. It is only after he saves them once more that he agrees to journey with them, citing that it would be a good opportunity to see more of the world. We see throughout the journey the effect the loss of his parents has on him, with the various cutscenes showing us his childhood with both his parents, as well as the siren showing us how much he still longs for his mother. I think that the loss he experienced contributes to Bartz's kind-heartedness and makes him a very unique character, simply because, when seeing his friends happy, he never forces any of his companions to follow him during his journey. For example, when Kryl and Bartz return to Boko in the Pirate's Cove, he finds him happy with Coco and with babies on the way. He asks Boko for his help one last time, but is prepared for Boko to stay behind with his family. Similarly, when Reyna and Ferris returned home, Kryl and Bartz departed without them, leaving them in what they think is a happier place. At his heart, Bartz is still very much a lone person, with the number of companions and friends he has to be quite low. However, the ones he does have and make throughout the game he values very highly and does whatever he can to help them. Reyna is another one of our party members and the Princess of Tycoon. She is a gentle and kind-hearted woman with a deep love for animals, in particular the Dragon of Tycoon. Reyna and her father, the King of Tycoon, have a close bond. That bond is what leads to Reyna setting out for the Wind Shrine to ensure that he is okay, as well as spending a good third of the game actively seeking him out to ensure his safety. Reyna lost her mother prior to the events of the game. Her mother fell ill, and the only thing that could save her was a cure made from a dragon's tongue. The last dragon in the world being that of Tycoon. Reyna learns of this and rushes to the dragon, knife in hand, fully prepared to do whatever it takes to save her mother. Her mother intercepts her, telling her that, much like Reyna herself has a mother who loves her, the dragon once did as well, and that it wouldn't be fair to end its life for the sake of saving someone who has lived their life. The player, or Reyna, is then given the choice to cut out the dragon's tongue or not. I didn't. This flashback was one of my favorites in the game because we spent the entire game being shown Reyna's love of dragons, and the lengths she will go to protect them. She's actively poisoned herself multiple times throughout the course of the game to save both her and Kryl's dragons. Now, at the end of the game, with the context of that cutscene, Reyna's dragon is shown to be the last living link to her mother that she has. It makes it that much sadder when we see the dragon sacrifice itself for Reyna, us finding it on top of the Phoenix Tower with its last bit of life as if he was waiting to say goodbye. I love when the Phoenix Summon is implemented as a narrative choice, and having the dragon after death manifesting into the Phoenix and the Flames of Rebirth ability was so sweet and heartfelt, and I loved it even though I hated going up the Phoenix Tower. Back on topic though, Reyna is a character who learned to always be considerate of others and to treat everything and everyone as you want to be treated. She is selfless and loving, and despite losing everyone except her older sister, she still maintains her pure heart. Ferris is very closely linked to Reyna. We learn throughout the course of the game that Ferris, as a child, was lost out at sea and was saved by Sildra, the sea dragon, and the pirate crew that she later became the captain of. When we first meet Ferris, she is pretending to be a man, as that was something that made her life easier among the pirates. Sildra and Ferris's connection is very similar to that of Reyna and the Tycoon dragons. Ferris loves and likens her relationship with Sildra to that of a sibling, and she also understands how she's feeling despite not being able to actively communicate with her. Sildra, at many points in the game, protects the party, such as in the Torna Canal, as well as sacrificing herself to save the party at Wall's Tower. I found Ferris's arc to be very interesting because a lot of it had to do with her accepting herself for who she was, while also taking on the new role of being a Princess of Tycoon and Reyna's older sister. Sildra was arguably Ferris's strongest link to her life as the pirate captain, and Sildra's sacrifice and subsequent death is very shortly before Ferris confirms and begins to accept her lineage, almost as if it's a rite of passage for her. Like Reyna, Ferris also goes through the process of looking for, finding, and losing her father, and with his death, her strongest link to her childhood past of being the heir to the Tycoon throne is also severed. I like the idea that Ferris goes through the process of establishing her own identity throughout the story, However, I wish that we didn't have to let Sildra die just for that symbolism. And that brings me to Galoof. Galoof throughout the first world is portrayed as this silly old man. He's an amnesiac who doesn't have any memories of his past, but he also proves himself to be very reliable, such as when he saved the team from the siren. I love Galoof's role in the team because although he doesn't know who he doesn't lose his sense of responsibility. While also maintaining a pretty carefree disposition, I don't really know how else to describe him besides saying he's very dad-coded. He's often one of the first ones to help people up when they fall. He always makes sure that people are okay after major events of the game, and he also often advises Bartz when Bartz isn't really sure what to do. I thought that was what made his character so special to all the other ones. Krile, his granddaughter, lost her parents when she was very young, and Galoof took on the role of caring for her. We see that side of him, the fatherly side, with the entire team as well. And seeing as how Bartz, Reyna, and Ferris all deal with the loss of family, in particular fathers, that makes Galoof a special character because he's able to fill that hole for them. That's why his death hits as hard as it does. It's foreshadowed very explicitly with the death of all the previous Dawn Warriors and the countless tellings that it's now the time of the Warriors of Light. But still, even if it's expected, he goes out protecting Krile and the team and ensuring they have a chance to save the world. By the time he does die, it isn't just Krile who's affected. It's all of them. Because they lost someone, again, who was able to fill the hole when they were missing their own family. And in Bartz's and Kryle's case, he was their last living link to their family. R.I.P. Galoof, I'll miss you forevermore. He was my favorite, oh my gosh. And that brings me to Krile. As mentioned, Krile is Galoof's granddaughter. She is from Galoof's world and was raised by him due to her parents journeying out to the desert and not coming back. Krile has an interesting ability to communicate with animals, making her very close with her dragons and the Moogles. For most of the game, Krile acts as a bit of a mystery. We don't really know who she is because Galoof isn't able to remember her. It is only after she saves us that Galoof remembers her and we get more insight into her character. At her heart, Krile is a lonely girl. She grew up in Ball Castle with her grandfather and her dragon, both of which she loves very much. After Galoof's death, Kryle's only motivation is to follow in his footsteps and complete what he could not. And in the process of doing that, she finds friends and those she considers family in Bartz, Reyna, and Ferris. Krile ends up being our final narrator, telling us about how the world has recovered and how she's happy, but she's also lonely and sad. She feels as though that now that the world has been saved and all her friends have returned to their lives, that she has been forgotten. And without her grandfather, she feels like she's alone. Of course, they prove her wrong, Bartz, Reyna, and Ferris meeting her at the Elder Tree while Kryle's mourning Galoof, telling her that no matter what, they're friends and they'll always be there for her. The cast of Final Fantasy V is so strong because we are shown what each of them values most, and we see all four of them lose whatever that is. Reyna, her dragon, and her family. Ferris, Sildra, and her father. Bartz and Krile losing Galoof, and for Bartz, also remembering the death of his father. Despite all this, they have each other, and they continue to grow past their loss. Found family trope for the win. Outside of the main cast, we have a bunch of other characters, such as the Dawn Warriors, Wolf, Exdeath, but the most memorable has to be Gilgamesh. Much like other entries of Final Fantasy, Gilgamesh at first acts as something of a spoof boss. He shows up and says some silly lines, but it's never difficult or an active roadblock. Still, despite that, he is hell-bent on kicking our butts, in particular Bartz and Galoof. It isn't until Gilgamesh is banished into the X Zone by Exdeath that he becomes a very compelling character. When we see him again in the X Zone, I cried so hard. He's dazed and confused, trying to escape but not sure where the exit is. Finally, he recognizes Bartz and company and once more tries to leave, telling them that hopefully in the next life he'll be one of them. I actually played through this section twice, once when I was a little intoxicated and I sobbed so hard, and then I ended up dying, so I had to play it again when I was sober, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna cry this time because I'm like sober. And then I played through it again and I cried again because it was just so sad. And I was like, Gilgamesh, I love you. Oh my gosh, I hope you get to be one of us too. Anyways, we see Gilgamesh once more during the last boss before Exdeath. At first, when he appears, it looks as though we'll have to fight him too, but then he turns his back to us, defending us from the onslaught of attacks and giving us his final words. In particular, his last words to Bartz, his expression that he wishes to fight him one last time hit me the hardest, especially because in World of Final Fantasy, every time Bartz is seen, he is very closely shadowed by Gilgamesh, who tries to get him to duel him at every turn. It was a very cute interaction, and despite not remembering Gilgamesh too well from my last playthrough of Final Fantasy V, I can definitely understand where his popularity derives from now. Much like its predecessors, Final Fantasy V utilizes active time battle system. You have the option of setting it to active or wait. Wait makes the game a little bit easier because the monsters don't act while you're selecting your skills or items. I had to change the game to wait about 3/4 in because I was struggling to find items in my menu because I suck. In terms of new stuff, Final Fantasy V's claim to fame is the perfection of the job system that Final Fantasy III introduced. Each character has 2 slots of abilities for each job, the first one being that inherent to the job, such as blue magic for the blue mage, and the second being one that the player can select based off of jobs they've already mastered and skills they've already learned. Furthermore, unlike in 3, there is no penalization for switching jobs as frequently as you want because there's no adjustment period where the character needs X number of battles to be able to utilize the job to the fullest. This added freedom, in my opinion, was what made the job system so fun in this game, because there was essentially infinite customization. My goal for this playthrough was to master every job for at least one character, and I did that and more. I like to combine usually a physical job with a magic type job, so for Bartz he was a blue and black mage and a warrior, Reyna was a summoner white mage, Kryl was a ninja monk time mage, and Ferris was a thief sorcerer. Then I just went ham and yeah. I remembered 5 being incredibly tedious the last time I played it, and I couldn't get to the final boss fast enough, but I honestly think it was just a skill issue or something because I actively put off the final boss this time around just to maximize my kits for each character, just because I had so much fun with it. Final Fantasy V follows the same format as Final Fantasy I, where it is very much go here, do that, with a lot of places being accessible in a linear fashion. Despite that, there are still many things to collect and find in the first 2 worlds, such as summons like Shiva, Ifrit, Rama, Shote, Carbuncle, and Golem, and many blue magics to find and pianos to play. My favorite part of the game has to be the merge world, simply because this is when the game fully opens up and pretty much lets you go wherever you want. You can basically finish the game, if you so choose, immediately, but there's also lots of powerful magics, summons, and weapons to find and collect, not to mention the Phantom Village that lets you complete your journey unto becoming the piano master. So many times when I was in the merge world dicking around, my brother would come in and be like, "Why are you spending hours grinding the blue magic spells when you know you aren't going to use them? Like, dude, don't you have a video to finish?" But now my screens are all basically filled out, except singing because bards suck and I can die happy. We're continuing the trend as we move into the music section because, guys, I was such a hater. I used to, whenever 5 came up in conversation, be like, the soundtrack has like 3 good songs. Cursed Earth, Battle Theme, Big Bridge. But honestly, that take is such a disservice to the OST. I love the Pirates Cove theme because it's that perfect combination of unfamiliar yet friendly. The place acts as a respite for us even though at first we're there to do something bad, and I think the theme just encapsulates that perfectly. Cursed Earth playing in the pirate graveyard and setting us on edge as we make our way through the unfamiliar place, only to then also play in the town of Karnak to give us that same feeling as we realize that the fire crystal is the second last one, the last known crystal location, and we have to protect it at all costs. The theme in the ancient library is amazing for showcasing the panic that is spreading within the walls. We know that something's going on without us even knowing what's going on. Not to mention the battle themes. The main battle theme is probably within my top 3 in the series. I even wrote lyrics to it because I just vibed with it that hard. And the battle theme that plays during the final X-Death fight, not Neo X-Death, is a song I've had stuck in my head countless times without remembering what it's from. So yeah, don't be a hater, go listen to the Final Fantasy V OST. Random thoughts I had while playing the game. I can't believe Reyna just straight up eats poison grass just to save Kryl's dragon. Like, my girl is such a badass, and I can't believe she's almost completely forgotten by the fandom. Everyone except Galoof sleeps with their mouth open, and guys, I can't. Probably just a coincidence, but after Galoof died, every single time I loaded up the game, his sprite was the one that walked across the screen, and oh my god, way to kick me while I'm down. I thought I got soft-locked in X-Death's castle in World 2 and I was gonna cry, but then it turned out that I'm just stupid and I can't see the door. I adore Kryl's attack animation as a ninja because it looks like she's just flapping her weapon at the enemy. I also like that when she's blinded, the glasses don't go over her eyes because she's shorter than the adult sprites the other characters have. In the Fork Tower, the first time I did it, I divided my teams and I put my physical attackers on the left. And while I was climbing up the tower, I received an ether from a potion. And then I put my magic casters on the right, and while they were climbing the tower, they got a potion. And I sat there for a solid 30 seconds being like, it sure would be funny if they set up these towers to be magic focused on one half and physical focused on the other, and that's reflected in the treasure, and I just managed to do it the complete opposite just for funsies. And then I got to the top, and my poor spellcasters went up against a boss that is immune to all types of magic, and they just got absolutely demolished. Crazy that it took me the entire game to notice that White Wind heals the equivalent of the caster's HP. My brother said he found Cryo creepy because unlike the other characters in battle, she always faced the player. Every game Mid appears in is a treat. Some of you may have noticed that I am playing the PS1 version of the game. This version is riddled with mistranslations and is generally regarded as the worst version of the game. So if you do want to play Final Fantasy V, I recommend the version on Steam or the Game Boy Advance version. Building on that, I am aware that Reina's real name is Lena, but I like Reina better and that's what I grew up with, so I'm going to call her Reina. Furthermore, if you have played the PS1 version, you might know that Bart's name is blank and you can put it in, or it's Butts, but we don't talk about that. The first time I played the game, I didn't know Bart's had a canon name already, so I chose to name him Arrow, like the wind spell. Imagine my pure delight when little Arrow turned out to be the hero of the wind crystal. Last thing I wanted to mention, I'm kind of tentative because like I said, the PS1 version is like very badly translated, but a little detail I noticed that I liked was Reina always called the King of Tycoon father while Ferris called him Papa. And I really like that as a detail because even if it wasn't supposed to be like that, the idea that Reina kind of grew up with him so she kind of sees him as an adult would see him, whereas this is somebody that Ferris lost when she was a young child, so she kind of sees him as she did when she was a child, and that's reflected in what she calls him. I thought that was cool. In conclusion, Final Fantasy V's strength, in my opinion, is the fact that it has a very strong story carried by strong characters that doesn't take itself too seriously. It's very silly, and that's something I appreciate in a game. My Final Fantasy V replay has officially made me have to completely reshuffle my Final Fantasy rankings, so if you're like me and you haven't picked it up in a while, then maybe go give it a try. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.